Hello, and live from an often dysfunctional and currently almost completely vacant Capitol complex here in Washington, D.C. I'm Congressman Brad Sherman. I come from America's best named city, Sherman Oaks, and we're having another one of our telephone town hall meetings. This is a meeting of those who live in the 32nd District, that is to say the West and the South San Fernando Valley, and some of the communities on the West Side. First, a little logistics. Write down the following phone number, 855-920-0548. And that is the phone number you should dial back in if for any reason we get disconnected. It's also the phone number we'll use for our next telephone town hall if you want to dial in. That one, however, won't be till mid-December. We're not allowed to have them within 60 days of the election. So our next one will be in mid-December, and we'll, of course, keep you all informed as to exactly the day and the time. Well, the time will be at 7 p.m., as they all are. Now, if you're not familiar with our telephone town halls, it's a giant conference call. I'll make an opening statement. We have people who have submitted questions in advance. And if you want to submit questions in advance for our next telephone town hall, you go to bradsherman.house. That's for House of Representatives, so bradsherman.house.gov, and maybe I'll answer one of your written questions as well. But most of the questions will come from those who are listening now and will present their questions orally. And if you dial *3, you'll be connected with my fine staff. If you have a personal question, folks in our Sherman Oaks office, right there on Van Nuys Boulevard at Addison, they can address your personal issue or help you unsnarl a problem with the federal government. And, of course, you can visit that office during business hours on any business day. We're located just 4 or 5 blocks north of the 101 freeway on Van Nuys Boulevard. So if you dial *3, you can ask them a personal question. But most people who dial *3 will want to be in the queue to ask a question. And so if you know you're going to want to ask a question, or if as things develop you decide you do, you dial *3. Now, we'll be taking questions only for those who live in the 32nd District. I don't care where you are in America, you're welcome to listen, but we'll take questions from people who live in our district. And as I mentioned, that district is the West and South San Fernando Valley and various communities on the West Side. Now, I want to put in a pitch for our constituent service team based there on Van Nuys Boulevard. And because we have on the line Scott Abrams, who heads that office, and Lisa Montano, who's our senior caseworker. Imagine a federal agency makes a mistake. It could happen, could affect you. Could be VA benefits or Social Security or Medicare or the IRS or passport. You contact our office at 818-501-9200. Talk to Lisa, talk to Scott. They'll work very hard. They'll solve your problem. And then I, Brad Sherman, take the credit. I think it's an outstanding system. And if you want to talk to our constituent service team, you can dial *3 right now, or you can call anytime during business hours. Now, people are going to be joining us throughout the first 10, 12 minutes of this town hall, so I'm going to repeat. If you want to ask a question, you want to get in the queue to ask a question, you dial *3. Now, I want to get out some information about those of you who know a young person interested in attending the military academies, Air Force, Annapolis, West Point. First, thank them for their interest in serving our country at what is a difficult time, and thank their parents for raising such an outstanding young man or woman. Then second, remind them that to get into the military academies, they need the kind of outstanding high school record that would get you into any competitive college. Plus, you can't get in unless you're nominated by your member of Congress. And if they live in our district, they need to contact my office during October of their senior year of high school. And they call John Alford, who's also on the line and available for anyone who dials *3. And the number there is 818-501-9200. I am guaranteed at least one person from our district for gets into each one of those academies, but we've had such outstanding applicants, they usually admit 3, 4, sometimes even 5. Now, if you're interested in coming to Washington, D.C. to see the sites, give us a call here in the Washington office, 202-225-5911. Ask for Sarah Martin and give us plenty of notice. The more notice you give us, the better things and tours will set you up with. And I'll let you know, the Capitol Complex on some days gets more tourists than Disneyland. But unlike Disneyland, it's free. Now, again, a reminder, if you want to get in the queue to ask a question, you dial *3. I serve on the Financial Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. As to foreign affairs, I know we'll get questions about the Middle East. We might get a question about Ukraine. But I want to point out that while those are the only international incidents that the press seems to follow, there are very extreme, difficult things happening in other parts of the world. For example, right now in Sudan, we've got over 17 million people facing acute food insecurity because of a civil war between the army and the other army. Sudan, in effect, has 2 armies, one called the Rapid Support Forces and the other called the Regular Army. And what is going on in Sudan now is probably the greatest crisis in the world. We lost just over the last few years 600,000 deaths in Tigray, which is in northern Ethiopia. That crisis continues, but in much reduced form. Thank God the number of deaths per day is substantially reduced. In Pakistan, a nuclear power, the person who got the most votes is in jail. And from a judicial system that is hardly independent of the political system, or at least not near as independent as our judicial system is. And 120,000 Armenians have been ethnically cleansed from the small country of the Republic of Artsakh. You have, in effect, an entire country depopulated by ethnic cleansing. And then I don't have to tell you about the risks that Taiwan faces from China. So there's a lot going on in the world. We'll deal with whatever questions come up. I'm sure that'll include the Middle East, but it may include some of these other issues as well. Our hearts go out to those affected by the Appalachia High School shooting in Winder, Georgia. We know that there was one person taken into custody, a 14-year-old. 9 people are fighting their injuries and fighting for their lives. And unfortunately, 2 teachers and 2 students have passed. I'm proud of the grades I earned back in my school days, but I'm particularly proud of the F I was given by the NRA because I've consistently supported every reasonable gun control effort. And I'd point out that Gabby Giffords, my friend and colleague, who, as you know, was a member of Congress and shot and now leads efforts on gun safety, has given Georgia an F for a number of reasons, including it has no red flag law, because this particular shooter was identified as someone who, it appears, had threatened to shoot up a school. And yet Georgia did not have the law, and the federal government does not have the law that would allow any judicial determination as to whether guns should be removed from the home. We need to pass laws to protect California, even though California has some pretty good laws, because in the greatest shooting in our area, which took place 25 years ago, the gunman came and brought his guns from the state of Washington. So even if we have good laws in California, we need good laws nationally. We need to ban the large capacity ammunition devices. Gabby Giffords is alive today because the assailant there had to reload. The more bullets he had, the more people he would have killed. We need, of course, to have that red flag law We need enhanced background checks. We need to close the gun show loophole. We did pass a relatively very modest bill into law back in 2022. The best thing you can say about it is it's the first step forward we've taken this century. But it did provide some enhancement in the background checks and dealt with something called the boyfriend loophole, which is to say it allowed you to prohibit somebody from getting a gun if for a 5-year period if they'd been convicted of beating up their paramour, whereas before it had to be a spouse. So there's a lot to talk about there in terms of gun safety. Next issue, the appropriations process. All federal government agencies run out of money on September 30th. We will not pass final appropriations bills for the fiscal year beginning October 1st. By October 1st, of course, we should, but it will not happen. And the Republicans are going to bring up a bill to continue to keep government functioning, but they're going to attach to it something that says if you want to register to vote, you in effect need to bring a passport, a driver's license, even the kind of driver's license that is only available to those in the country legally. Those are the new ones that will be required in order to get on an airplane. That's not enough. And the vast majority of Americans don't have passports. So it'll be very hard to register to vote. And it seems rather extreme to say, well, they have this idea on the voter registration process and they're going to shut down all of government unless Democrats give it to them. That isn't going to happen. We've got a heat wave coming up in the valley. It may be 113 degrees tomorrow. We will have, as one of our guests here on this town hall, we will have two guests, by the way. Pilar Schiavo from the state legislature and Scott Schmerelson from the LAUSD school board. And we'll have a chance to ask Scott about school safety tomorrow and whether any schools will be closed because of heat. Obviously, global warming is for real. I'm a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal, have been since the beginning, and have a 100% record. And we're going to have the Assemblywoman on in just a minute, even before we take our first federal question. I will cover one more issue briefly, and that is the national elections. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. When you look at the national polls, if Harris is ahead by 2.5 points, that means it's a 50-50 race. And the reason for that is the Electoral College. The Electoral College reflects a kind of a distorted system whereby those smaller states get a bigger say in who's president. There's not one but 2 Dakotas, 4 senators, 6 Electoral College votes from 2 Dakotas, which together have less people than the San Fernando Valley. And so you can say with some certainty that Pennsylvania and the other absolutely key swing states is 2.5% less Democratic than the country as a whole. That relationship, that 2.5 points that you can pretty much count on, changes as of about right now. Because up until now, Pennsylvania and California and Florida, we're all in the same country. We're all getting the same free coverage of the 2 candidates. But right about now, the paid campaign begins. So up until now, watching a Dodger or Angels game and watching a Phillies game is pretty much the same. Strikes, some balls, some hits, some errors, some runs, and then a beer commercial. But starting right about now, you may be watching the Dodger game or the Angel game right now. Hell, it's the same game. I hope you're paying attention to the town hall, but you can perhaps see the game in the background. That game is the same as always. But if you were watching the Phillies game, all the commercials would be politics. You'd be looking forward, hoping you could see a beer commercial, even a deodorant commercial. And so I don't know which paid campaign will be more effective, but those paid campaigns you won't see unless you happen to be traveling in Nevada or Arizona or Pennsylvania or one of the other swing states. And on the one hand, it looks like the Harris campaign will have more money than the Trump campaign. On the other hand, the advantage the Trump campaign has is that it's the experts who will be crafting that campaign, not Trump himself personally. And so while Trump's free media reflects his personality, his paid media will be reflective of the smartest operatives in the Republican Party. So we will have to see how those swing states go. But if you look and you see that Harris is 2 or 3 points ahead, that means it's absolutely neck and neck, unless you're looking at the individual state polls. And for those polls, it comes down probably to 7 states: Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. And there are a few other states that might be in play, but those are the states everybody's looking at. So we're going to hear from Assemblywoman Schiavo for just a few minutes about what's happening in Sacramento, and then we'll take a question from the floor on federal issues. Pilar, are you available to stay on and answer questions about state government, or are you just going to give us a report?
I am happy to stay on.
Okay. Well, then stay on for first give us 2 or 3 minutes about what's going on in Sacramento, and then we'll particularly invite people who have a question for you to ask early, sometime in the next 15, 20 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful.
Oh,
Thanks
I should. And look, Assemblywoman Schiavo is doing a great job. She represents the northwest San Fernando Valley, as well as areas to the north of our district in the Santa Clarita Valley. And let's hear what's going on.
Thank you, Congressman Sherman. Appreciate you having me on and all the great work you're doing to advocate for our community in Washington, D.C. Happy to be with everybody tonight. I wanted to give just a quick update on our state legislative session. Just ended, the end of our 2-year session. The deadline was Saturday night to get all of our bills passed and onto the governor's desk. And he has 30 days to sign it. So basically until the end of September to sign our bills, to enact them into law. We have been, since I've gotten elected about 1.5 years ago, we've really focused on what I call the 3 H's: housing, homelessness, and healthcare. And so have a number of bills in all of those policy areas, both this year and last year. But we've also really been focusing on pocketbook issues because we know that times are hard and people are struggling. So we have a really great bill to put more money into people's pockets, and it's called our Click to Cancel bill, it's on the governor's desk now. It would be the first in the nation, and it basically makes it just as easy to cancel those pesky subscriptions and auto renewals as it is to sign up. You don't have to be on hold forever. You don't have to get on a computer to cancel, and you have to really give permission to be charged and all of those good things. So a lot of consumer protections, because we've found that people don't even know they're paying for things or can't figure out how to get out of them, and those add up to hundreds of dollars for folks, which we know right now makes a big difference and puts food on the table and gas in the car. So that bill we're very excited about and really hopeful the governor is going to sign it. We've worked with his office on it. We also know that retail theft has been a huge issue. I was very proud to be at the signing of our retail theft bill that will do a number of things that I think are responsive to concerns that I've heard in the district and we've heard throughout, our communities in California, giving police more tools to be able to hold thieves accountable, especially when they're doing, multiple thefts, being able to combine together multiple small thefts into a bigger one to be able to charge people with a felony and have higher penalties, and also, making sure that we are cutting down on the demand. So all those online sales, they have to show receipts. They have to, have protections to make sure that you can't get away with selling things online. And also, some things to just prevent crime in the first place, anti-recidivism programs that we've seen to be incredibly effective, and want to make sure that those continue as well. So there's a package of 10 bills that passed. It was a very big legislative effort this year. I was part of on the Retail Theft Select Committee that worked on, figuring out what policies to move forward. And we think that these are really going to make a big impact in our communities. The other area that I just wanted to touch on really, yeah.
I'll ask you to wrap up quickly because I want to get much.
We've brought a record $95 million of investments back to the district, and $1 million on top of that back into the pockets of our constituents. So if anyone needs help moving the wheels of state departments, please call our office. And our number is 661-286-1565.
Laura, thank you so much. Johan, let's take a question on a federal issue, and then if we have one on a state issue, we'll ask the Assemblywoman to address that, and then we'll let her go, or we'll keep her on until we have one on state. But let's do a federal one first.
I have a question on a state issue.
Oh, okay. If you want to go with a state issue, we'll let the Assemblywoman focus on it. Sure.
This is Sarah from Northridge, who has a question about the post office in Northridge. Sarah, you are...
I think that's a federal issue, but go ahead. Let's hear the question.
Yes, hi, federal issue. My name is Sarah. I live in Northridge, and for many years, for almost forever, we had a post office, the U.S. Post Office, on Reseda Boulevard near Plummer. And then it closed, and the gossip is that we lost our lease. And so I'm asking if that Northridge Post Office will be replaced somewhere soon, because we're having to go to Granada Hills and Chatsworth, and those are more, they're crowded with the extra business.
I know that a retail post office will be reestablished in Northridge, hopefully pretty soon. Their question is whether to also have the back end be there, or whether all they'll have is the retail operation. A lot of postal facilities, you go into the front, it seems like a relatively small thing, and then there's this huge back area. And so I know that, normally I don't call upon one member of my staff. I know that Scott Abrams, my California Chief of Staff, has been focused on this. So if he's on and he can chime in with anything beyond what I'm saying, he should do that. But I do know that the traditional post office has been closed, and that we absolutely need a Northridge post office.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay. At this point, we'll do a survey question. So this is a chance for everybody to express their views, and even if I don't have time to call on you orally. And the first one is one we do in every town hall, and that is, do you approve of President Biden's performance as president so far? If you approve of what Biden's doing, press 1. If you disapprove, press 2. If you're unsure or kind of in the middle, press 3. With that, let's take another question.
All right, Congressman. This one is from Stefan about regarding rent control. Stefan, you are now live.
Hello, Stefan. Are you there?
Oh, hi, Brad. Thank you for taking my question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wanted to know about your position on rent control, particularly in Los Angeles.
That is mostly a city issue, but I support the idea of it being of Los Angeles being able to pass its initiative. As you know, that provides for rent control, vacancy decontrol, some exceptions for luxury units, some exceptions for newly constructed units. The critical thing is that we build more units, and that we allow units to be built. And often that's a zoning issue. Sometimes it's a financing issue, and I fought on the Financial Services Committee to make sure that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are doing as much to finance apartments as they are homes. The rent control will vary from one area to another. It's not a federal issue. As far as I know, you don't need rent control in Wichita. I have no idea what rent control should or should not exist in Kansas, and that's why, thank God, I'm not called upon to vote on a national rent control bill, because I have no idea what it would do for, how it would affect things in Kansas. Never rented an apartment in Wichita. Let me see. I'm going to go on to one of the RSVP questions that is submitted by Madeline Taylor of Woodland Hills, who asks, what is your stance on the continued Gaza massacre? What is your reasoning behind this stance? And have you voted when issues related to the war on Gaza have come up? I have voted consistently to provide aid to Israel, which was attacked on October 7th. All of our weapons are transferred to Israel, subject to the Leahy Law and other federal laws that require that Israel do what it can to reduce civilian casualties. Reducing civilian casualties is incredibly difficult in urban warfare. Keep in mind, Hamas invaded southern Israel and could have stayed in southern Israel and fought, but within 24 hours they withdrew all their troops to behind human shields. Had they stayed in southern Israel and fought, all of the fighting would be between armed forces, and there would be no Palestinian civilian casualties. But by retreating and hiding behind the human shields, they've created the kind of war that we in the United States faced in Fallujah and Mosul. And I've read a lot of the commentary by the U.S. Army's #1 expert in urban warfare. That's John Spencer, who heads West Point's Urban Warfare Studies program. And he says that Israel has done at least as good a job as the United States, at least as good a job as any modern country in minimizing casualties in urban war. But urban war that involves, the most recent, as you know, 6 Israelis, one of them was an Israeli-American or a dual citizen, was found in a tunnel. They were shot in the back of the head. But you ask, well, where was the top of that tunnel? And the answer is a school. I've seen the picture with it was a child's bedroom. It reminded me of a school, but there were paintings on the wall, Mickey Mouse, etc. And so when Hamas decides to carry on its military operations from right below a kid's bedroom, that makes it very difficult to minimize civilian casualties. Ultimately, the blame for the casualties of the war, I don't put on the individual soldiers unless they violate their orders. I put it on the politicians who use violent means to achieve an unwarranted end. Hamas governed Gaza. Gaza had no Jews in it, no IDF in it. It had its own border with another Arab state, Egypt. And on October 7th, Hamas decided to attack. And they did so because of their belief that every Jew who lives between the river and the sea should be expelled or killed. And and you can argue on the history of this. Obviously, Jews are the people of Judea. The kingdom of Judea was there and conquered by Rome. And Jews were expelled in the century after the birth of Christ. So they're returning to their homelands. But even discounting that, almost every group of people in the world lives on land that they moved into at some point. There were no Turks in Turkey 1,000 years ago. There were no Slavs in Yugoslavia, what for a while was called Yugoslavia, 1,500 years ago. And certainly the United States, unless you're a Native American, you move there. Virtually all of us move there under the flag of the United States. Poland, what you see on the map as northern Poland, that was all territory that Poles moved into after World War II. So throughout the world, we have people who live where they live. And if you want to depopulate northern Poland of all Poles, depopulate California of all Americans, depopulate Turkey of all Turks, or depopulate Israel of all Jews, you're going to engage in a level of ethnic cleansing that is always, at least in almost all situations, accompanied by genocide. So from the river to the sea is a slogan for killing, displacing and or killing all Jewish Israelis. And Hamas demands that, and anything less they're unwilling to settle for. So I think it's imperative that Hamas be destroyed. You can't destroy the philosophy of Hamas, just as we never destroyed the philosophy of the Nazis. But we defeated them on the battlefield and turned them from a very powerful army and controlling a huge territory to a fringe group that we still have to worry about. So I look forward to Hamas there'll still be people reading the writings of Hamas in the future, but if they can be defeated, hopefully in a way that minimizes civilian casualties, we can then move toward a two-state solution with Israel hopefully prodded in that direction. Let's go on to the next oral question, Johan. Oh, and we've got the results from our first survey question. 72% of you approve of Biden's performance, 18% of you disapprove, 10% are unsure. And at our last town hall, it was 76 to 19 to 5. So a lot of continuity to what people in the Valley and on the West Side think of President Biden. Let's go on to the next question.
Got a question from Gregory who wants to ask you something about animal protection rights. Gregory, you are now live.
Hello. Representative Sherman has a really good, in fact, a best possible record on animal welfare, and so does the Democratic Party, at least relative to the largely animal welfare indifferent and even hostile Republican Party. And so I'm wondering if Representative Sherman will make the decent and better treatment of non-human creatures, and there's a whole range of these, agricultural animals in particular, but also wildlife and domestic animals, especially homeless domestic animals, a more prominent part of his campaign messaging, which he has every reason and right to make. And more importantly, will Mr. Sherman encourage the Democratic Party to do the same across the country in campaign 2024? I think this is a more important issue than it has been treated. It's been overlooked, but it's consequential and I think important, and I hope this will happen.
Well, I have just sent an email out to everyone in our district that has communicated with me on any animal welfare issue. My current effort on this, I don't regard that as part of my campaign. I regard that as part of my efforts to be your member of Congress and communicate with you. So and in some of our glossy mailings, and we don't send out many of those because they're expensive, I've had a section on animal welfare. As I think it was Gandhi who said that you can evaluate a society based on how it treats animals. So I agree with you on the issue. I have not communicated to the Harris folks, and this is a governmental call, so I'm not going to get involved in political strategy, but I will say that I wish that Biden and Harris were communicating more on animal issues, because the issues that Democrats and Republicans tend to yell at each other about, everybody's heard that. I mean, we know where Harris stands on abortion. Trump is changed back and forth, but his position when he was in this direction or that direction or the other direction has all been very widely reported. And yet, I've watched the news a fair amount. I haven't seen either side focus their position on animal welfare and humane treatment of animals. And I think voters around the country will want to know about that. So I'm hoping both campaigns, only one of which will listen to me, will communicate their views on that, because otherwise it just becomes a screaming match about the 2 or 3 issues that get covered all the time. With that, let's go to another survey question. I'm going to tell my staff I'm skipping what we had as B, and I'm going to go on actually going to go on to what we had identified as question D. Now, no side is perfect, but in your view, which side carries has acted most responsibly in the Middle East? If you think Hamas has acted most fairly and responsibly, press 1. If you think the Israelis have been responsible, press 2. And if you think they're both equal, press 3. And if you're unsure, press 4. So if you think Hamas has been the most reasonable party, press 1. If you think the Israelis have been the most reasonable, press 2. Let's go on to the next question, Johan. And I don't know if you have a question for Pilar. If you don't, then I'll tell her that she can either continue to listen. Maybe we will have a question for her later, or that she can go on about her evening. So, Johan, where do we stand?
At the time, we do not have any state-related.
We at the present time don't have a question about state issues. Okay. And I know we're going to have our second guest come on in a few minutes to talk about schools, but let's take one more question from the floor.
This is from Shant from.
Johan, if you could speak louder.
Shant, you are now live.
Yeah. Hello, Representative Sherman. My name is Sean. Yeah, I'm from Encino. You have visited my high school at AGBU in Canoga Park.
Oh.
Number one, I want to thank you for, number one, bringing up Sudan, the RSF, and the horror that's happening there. As an Armenian, I want to thank you. I have shivers on my body for bringing up the 99% ethnic cleansing of what was once the Republic of Artsakh.
So and I should point out to people listening, Armenians had lived in that area, it looks like for 3,000 years, since well before Rome. And they were ethnically cleansed by Azerbaijan back over the last 2 years, and all of them have been displaced. This is although Artsakh was an Armenian area, Stalin assigned it to what was then the Soviet Socialist Republic of Azerbaijan, deliberately to create mischief and tension. And so when the Soviet Union broke up, Azerbaijan claimed this Armenian area, and just in the last 2 years they've used military force to depopulate the entire area. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Representative Sherman, for giving that background. My grandparents, also live in Woodland Hills. They are currently in Yerevan. What can we do? What can the U.S. government do? And if there's any legislation that you might be thinking of to help support this Western-oriented government currently in Armenia, led by Prime Minister Pashinyan, who I can tell is trying to tiptoe his way out of that old Soviet-Russian sphere and come to us, liberty, democracy, do you think there's anything that we can do in our government to help support all of the refugees that have settled in Armenia? And
yes, the vast majority of the people who lived in this small republic of Artsakh have moved to Armenia. There was the big extraordinary national security and foreign aid bill that passed. Everybody paid attention to the $60 billion for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel. There was also money in that for humanitarian purposes, and people just thought, oh, well, that's going to be spent in Gaza. That's not the case. That's for the entire world. And so when Blinken was before our committee, I had a chance to get him on the record and get him to declare to the entire Foreign Affairs Committee and the world that a chunk of that money will be spent to support the refugees. Now, beyond that, I think it's critical that we provide defensive weapons to Armenia, just as I was fighting for defensive weapons for Ukraine 10 and 15 years ago, because if one of your allies cannot defend themselves, then you see what we had in Ukraine. So it's important that Armenia be able to defend its remaining territory, because the dictatorial and oil-rich government in Baku, Azerbaijan, has not only conquered Artsakh, but they have made noises about conquering much or all of the Republic of Armenia, and we've got to deter that. Finally, I don't think the United States should ever accept this depopulation of Artsakh. I can't tell you that I see a way to reverse that immediately, but the best example of the United States refusing to accept an injustice and then reversing it is today's independence of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. We never recognized the Soviet Union's conquest of those three republics during the 1940s, and it seemed a little crazy. Well, I mean, they're part of the Soviet Union, and lo and behold, some 50 years after that, they achieved their independence. So Artsakh should be the Republic of Artsakh, a second Armenian state. But until then, we have to defend Armenia. And then I've also taken the lead. You may not know this. I used to be a pretty good tax lawyer back in my younger days, and I am the strongest advocate for the United States negotiating a tax treaty with Armenia. Both, I think that's symbolic. We only have tax treaties with our most important trading allies, but also to make sure that international investment isn't subject to double taxation, which is the primary purpose of a tax treaty. So the government in Yerevan has got to figure out its negotiating position on that, but I have a commitment from the then Secretary of the Treasury that we're ready to sit down and negotiate such an agreement. So there's a lot for us to do, and I'm going to go on now to the next RSVP question, but first give you the answer. Who's most reasonable? 6% Hamas, 47% the Israeli government, 26% say both or both equally, and 21% are unsure. Okay, we'll go on to a question from Carolyn Sue White of Sherman Oaks. What are the difficulties in eliminating the Electoral College? The Electoral College favors small states whose citizens don't represent a majority. And yes, this is a huge unfairness for California. I mentioned this earlier. There are 2 Dakotas. They get 4 senators and 6 Electoral College votes. And, of course, they are reliably Republican areas since the days of George McGovern. 60 years ago, 50 years ago, or thereabouts. So we should abolish the Electoral College. You can't do that without a constitutional amendment. no Republican is willing to vote for that constitutional amendment because the unfairness has favored the Republicans. Both George W. Bush and Donald Trump would not have gotten into the White House if it hadn't been for this unfair system that slants things in favor of smaller states and tremendously disadvantages California. There is the idea of an interstate compact, which is another way to try to get to the same answer, but it would be effective only if Republican states joined, and there's no evidence that they will. So the answer is that if Harris wants to be president, she's got to go out and get 2.5% more of the vote than Trump. Subject to there'll be some adjustments to that based on how effective their paid advertising is in the states where they're dumping all the money. So that's and while I'm dealing with these RSVP questions, I'll also deal with Magna Lane of Studio City. Do you have any idea when the Affordable Connectivity Program will be reinstated? This is a program that allows those of very modest means and on fixed income, including seniors, to get discounts on the Internet bill. The Internet is a necessity. Unfortunately, this bill, this program, which I voted for, expired on June 1st of 2024. We have received thousands and thousands of emails. I have co-sponsored the Affordable Connectivity Program Extension Act. The Republican majority in the House has refused to consider this bill. We've got to get it passed because the Internet is a necessity. Let's go on to I believe we have our second guest speaker. Is he available yet?
Not on the line yet, sir.
Is he on the line yet?
No, sir.
Oh, okay, so you'll let me know when the LAUSD board member's on. Well, I will have a couple of questions for him. One is whether any schools will be closed with this huge heat wave we expect tomorrow. And the second, of course, is to comment about the shootings in Georgia at a school. With that, let's take another oral question.
Yes, we got Shanna from Brentwood has a question regarding anti-Semitism.
Okay.
Shanna, you should be on the line.
Yeah, hey. Hello.
Hello.
Hey. Yeah, hey. First of all, Congressman Sherman, thank you so much for your strong voting record in support of Israel, our strongest ally, not just in the Middle East, but in the world. That being said, the congressional hearings on anti-Semitism were extremely powerful to watch and obviously really shook up some of the administrations of these schools. But even in these first days and weeks of the new school year, we're seeing that nothing is being done and that the anti-Semitism is raging, particularly in the Ivy League, worse than ever before. Now, obviously, UCLA has made some pretty strong statements about how they're going to supposedly be dealing with anti-Semitism on campus. I'm very skeptical that that's going to happen. But what is Congress actually going to do to follow up on those hearings? Thank you.
There are two ways to follow up. One is through pressure and just to demand that these students, that the Jewish students be protected on these campuses. In addition to what you've seen publicly from me and so many others, I've had one-on-one conversations with the presidents of Yale, USC, UCLA, Rutgers, Harvard, Columbia, a few others. And by the way, your question is quite similar to the question of Joy Booth of Woodland Hills, so I'm going to answer your question and hers at the same time. But I've been fighting this issue on campuses for well over 15 years. Back in the 60s, we passed a law requiring that schools make sure that that education is not interfered with because of someone's national origin or race. And that's Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And for decades and decades, that was interpreted to not affect Jewish students because they were classified Judaism not as just a religion and not a race or national origin. I fought with the Bush administration, won, then lost, and then we finally won again under the Obama administration to get Title VI to apply to anti-Semitism. Because, look, the anti-Semitism has all the characteristics of racial bigotry, and if you want to get technical, Judaism actually means the religion of the Kingdom of Judea. So it is national origin, albeit a country that did not exist for a couple of millennia. And so we've won that battle, but then there's a second battle. Okay, the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education, believes that in order to get federal funds, a university must prevent anti-Semitism from interfering with education of Jewish students. But then the issue is, how do you define anti-Semitism? The definition you need is the State Department definition. I support that in part because my wife wrote it. She's been working at the State Department for 25 years. She didn't really write it. She got the State Department to adopt a European definition. The fighting issue there is whether from the river to the sea, all Jews should be expelled and Israel should be abolished, whether that is anti-Semitic. And that's kind of a silly question. I mean, if you wake up tomorrow and as you drive by the intersection of Sepulveda and Ventura Boulevard, if you see somebody waving a giant sign saying "Abolish Albania," you'd be well within your rights to think that that person is anti-Albanian. You see a giant sign that says "Abolish Slovakia," that person is anti-Slovak. And if you call for the abolition of the world's only Jewish state, you're anti-Semitic. Now, can you criticize the activity of such a government? Of course. I've never met a Jew who didn't criticize the government of Israel, especially in Israel. I've never met an Israeli who didn't criticize, usually within the first hour of when I meet them. So we need to get that definition applied, and we need to make it plain to universities that just as the federal government required them to protect black students and still requires them to, but certainly in the 60s, and ever since then, to protect black students and their education, we've got to do this. I want to use this as a chance to say, bring to my attention any incident, particularly one where you get video, not just where a Jewish student is being insulted, but where that insult, where that blockage is interfering with their education, not letting them into the library, for example. And we not only face the problems on campus, we place lethal violence at synagogues around this country, and the threat of that is much higher now than it was in prior decades, and that's why I am seeking $2 million for a grant program. Half of it for the one run by the Jewish Federation of Los Angeles, the other administered by the LA County government, to provide for security at Jewish institutions that might be subject to lethal violence. So I've gotten that through the Appropriations Committee in the House, and as I indicated at the beginning of this conversation, the appropriations bills for this year are not going to get passed by September. I'm hoping that they get passed as early as December. There's an effort by Republicans to kick the can down the road till January or February, when they hope that we have a different administration. Let's go on to the next question.
Sure. Want to let you know that we have.
Yes, Scott is on. Yes. Why don't we hear from Board Member Schmerelson, and as I indicated earlier, I'm going to ask him whether the enormous heat we're likely to face tomorrow is going to close down any schools, and whether he has any comments about the terrible school shootings in Georgia. Scott, why don't you tell us what's going on at school now that the school's been back in session for a few weeks?
Thank you, Congressman. I am so happy that school has gone off to a good start at LAUSD. I'm your board member for Los Angeles Unified School District in the Valley, Board District 3. We are making sure that every one of our classrooms are staffed by a credentialed teacher, and not only that, we have a great number of counselors, psychiatric social workers, pupil services and attendance people, and we make sure that all the needs of our kids and their families are met at LAUSD. So I'm just very happy we started off a wonderful year. About air conditioning, Congressman, I guess my new job is sending air conditioning questions for schools. I am on the phone constantly making sure that these units that break down are having servicemen come right away to the schools to have them fixed. We have, oh my goodness, thousands and thousands
Scott,
of rooms.
School is in session tomorrow. They're not closing any schools in Woodland Hills or anywhere else.
No schools are closed. No schools are closed. No. That's for sure. Terrible shooting in Georgia. Just terrible. Congressman, I'm a big supporter of school police. It's very important to have safety in school, and my motto is, without having safety in school, you really can't have achievement at school. Mm-hmm. We have campus aides, we have lots of people who help with safety, but the people that protect our lives, protect our school property, are the school police. I am a big supporter of school police. I think they're an essential part of our school system.
Mm-hmm. Thank you a lot for that report. And if we have any questions for the school board member, Johan, try to bring those up. I'm going to do a survey question now. Scott, I'll ask you to just stay on the line for another 12 minutes or so in case we do get a question for you. Although an awful lot of our people are going to ask about federal issues, so I can't promise you one. I do have a survey question, and that is, our current national defense spending, including the cost of providing benefits to our veterans, which is an important part of their compensation for serving in the military, is 4.6% of our gross domestic product. Do you think, press 1 if you think we're spending too much on national defense. Press 2 if you think we're spending the right amount on national defense. Press 3 if you think we're spending too little on national defense. And 4 if unsure. So if you think we're spending too much, press 1. Right amount 2. We should be spending even more, and we're spending too little now. Press 3. Unsure, press 4. And let's go on to the next question.
I have a question over here for the board member regarding school crossings. Lourdes, you are now live.
Hi. Thank you so much for having this town hall. My name is Lourdes, and I live in Woodland Hills. And we have a designated crossing at De La Osa and Topanga that cars never stop for us. When the light is flashing, this leads directly into where our school is. And I've seen cars go onto oncoming traffic lanes just to avoid stopping for us. So I have been in touch with someone from the Los Angeles Department of Transportation, and they say that it's a Caltrans issue. So I'm hoping that you can try to nudge somebody at Caltrans to either add more lights so the cars stop for us, or maybe it turns into a traffic light, but we should be able to feel safe walking to and from school with our kids.
Which school is this, by the way? Which school does this affect?
I believe she dropped off the line. It was...
Okay. I think Scott knows where it is.
Congressman, I agree 100% with the lady. To get a traffic study for lights or stop signs or crosswalks, you have to have the Department of Transportation for Los Angeles come out and do it. Mm-hmm. What is even more important to me is crossing guards. And crossing guards are a function of the city of Los Angeles. And I'm a big proponent. Right now we have 500 crossing guards throughout the city, and that's really, really not enough. I have been pushing to have the school district be involved in the training of crossing guards. I mean, it's so great to have volunteers at your school also earn 3 or 4 hours as a crossing guard, a paid job, and they're already at the school. They know the kids. They know the neighborhoods, and I'm still pushing to have LAUSD establish a crossing guard system.
Yes, what our questioner painted a picture that sounded fairly dangerous.
And the school was Woodland Hills Elementary School.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to do one more survey question, and this is about Project 2025, a document that has calls for abolishing the Department of Education. I'm sure Scott has some views on that. Reducing the scope of Medicare and Social Security, restricting access to abortion pills and medical, that is to say pills, is the predominant abortion methodology in our country, and ending civil service protections, allowing people to be fired for political purposes up to 50,000 federal employees. So that's Project 2025. This is a controversial project. It's being put together by people very closely associated with Donald Trump, but I should point out Trump says that he does not adopt this. In any case, if you support Project 2025, press 1. If you oppose Project 2025, press 2. And if you're unsure, press 3. Let's go on, and that'll be our last survey question, and we've got time for at least a couple oral questions. What's the next one you want?
Sir, I got a question from Sue from Reseda, who has wants to talk about gun violence. Sue, you're now live.
Yes. Hi, Sherman. The crime out here is unreal. There's been so much crime, and guns are available to people. It seems like they're making them on the computer. There's the ghost guns, and I don't know what we can do about all this. There's been robberies in homes, especially here in Encino and the wealthier areas like Woodland Hills, and it's scary. I don't even like to go out at night anymore. I don't know what can be done about it. I know that there is a lack of policemen and security in these places, and it's not good. Nordstrom's was robbed. They come in and they take things. The people are stealing. Everything is locked up now. If you go to a market, you find you got to get somebody to open the door.
You want to buy some razor blades. It takes you 15 minutes to get somebody to come over and unlock the cabinet. Yep.
Yeah, it's just changing. So, and it's not for the good.
I think that the organized retail theft. I mean, we've always had shoplifting, but what you have are mass mobs coming in, stealing thousands of items, and what incentivizes them, because most the old style shoplifting, people would steal one thing that they wanted to use. Now a mob comes in. Well, what are they doing? Their job is to sell that online. And Assemblywoman Schiavo was on the line to talk about how that is going to be discouraged in two ways. First, tougher penalties. It's one thing a teenager steals a candy bar. It's another thing when a mob comes in organized to just take everything out of the store, or all the high-value things out of the store. That is a felony. That has got to be prosecuted. People have to do serious time for that. And then the second way you close that down is you close down these online sellers that are selling the products that have been stolen. Because, people don't want, 2,000 razor blades. They want to steal 2,000 razor blades and then sell them for cash. I remember when swap meets were a much bigger deal than they are now, and you had products that were stolen sold there in the old days. Today, it's mostly online. That has to be shut down. So I think I hope the governor signs this package of bills that should deal with that. As to gun control, there's a host of things that need to be done. They need to be done nationally because it's not hard to go to Arizona and buy guns and bring them back to California. And if one person can just go to Arizona and buy a bunch of guns and bring them back for all their friends, then you do not have effective gun control in California. And that's why we need and look, it's right now the Republicans are majority in the House. They are not for any of this, but we need to limit to prohibit these large capacity ammunition feeding devices. If you're a hunter and it takes you more than 10 bullets to kill a deer, get out of the forest. You don't belong there. We need to have these red flag laws that would allow a family member or a law enforcement officer to petition a court to have firearms removed from a particular home. We need the gun show loophole fixed so that everybody who buys a gun is buying only for themselves, a limited, number of guns per month or one per month, so that they're not really just fronting for other people, and that they go through the background check. We certainly need to close the bump stock loophole, which the Supreme Court recently opened up. There's a host of things that we need to do at the federal level to deal with a country. I believe that roughly half the guns in the world are owned by Americans, and we are about 4% of the world's population. Defense spending, the results are too much, 19%, right amount, 30%, not enough, 27%, unsure, 24%. That 27% surprises me a little bit, but the 27% believe we are not spending enough on defense. Project 2025 is supported by 5% of you, opposed by 85%, unsure 10%. I think we're going to have to bring our town hall to a conclusion. We'll be doing the next one in mid-December, and if I go overtime, our vendor charges us a lot more money. So if you want to know where I stand on all issues, or if you want a porthole to send me any kind of note, you go to bradsherman.house.gov. That's bradsherman.house for House of Representatives.gov. When I say goodbye, you're going to hear our voicemail system. Please give me your email address so that I can keep you informed. Even if I already have your email address, you need to give it to me because I probably bought it. There are a lot of vendors out there. But if you give it to me, then I'm allowed to continue to keep you updated. And if I just bought it, well, there are severe limits on what I'm allowed to do, particularly in the next 2 months. So it's a weird house rule. Just give me your email address if you want to be kept informed. And also, not everybody got a chance to express their views. Express your view. I'm not going to listen tonight because it is well past 11 East Coast time, but I will listen tomorrow. So this is your chance, if you didn't get a chance to ask a question, to let me know where you stand. So this is Congressman Brad Sherman. I want to thank everybody for participating, whether you live on the west side or you live in the west and south San Fernando Valley. And I look forward to keeping in touch both in person and and in every other way. Thank you very much.